7 crazy supercharged vintage American cars of the 1970s. In 1978, a pickup truck was the fastest American production vehicle you could buy. Not a Corvette, not a Trans Am. A red Dodge pickup with chrome exhaust stacks poking through the bed. The same decade that killed the muscle car also quietly birthed some of the most insane forced induction experiments Detroit ever attempted. Cars and trucks with superchargers, turbochargers, and compression bolted onto engines that had no business making the power they made. 7 of them were genuinely crazy. Here's every one, counted down from the merely wild to the one that changed everything. Number 7. The 1970 Oldsmobile Toronado with Paxton Supercharger. Before turbos became Detroit's answer to everything, Paxton Superchargers was a company that serious American performance builders turned to when they needed more power without changing the engine. Paxton had been supplying supercharger kits as dealer-installed options and aftermarket packages since the 1950s, working with Ford on the supercharged Thunderbird and later with Carroll Shelby on the GT350 Mustang. By 1970, Paxton kits were available over-the-counter at dealerships for a wide range of American V8s, including the Oldsmobile Toronado's massive 455 cubic inch engine. The Toronado was already an unusual car. It was a front-wheel drive, personal luxury coupe at a time when almost no American performance vehicle used front-wheel drive. Introduced in 1966 and revised for 1971. Its 455 cubic inch V8 produced 375 horsepower from the factory. And with a Paxton centrifugal supercharger bolted on to the dealer option program, output climbed substantially toward the 450 to 475 horsepower range, depending on installation specifications. Paxton's centrifugal design differed from the Roots-type blowers associated with drag racing, in that it built boost progressively with engine speed, rather than providing maximum pressure at low revs, giving the Toronado a progressive, streetable power delivery that its front-wheel drive chassis could manage without immediately spinning the tires into the next county. The combination of front-wheel drive, luxury cruiser proportions, and hidden supercharged V8 made the Paxton Toronado one of the definitive American sleepers of the early decade. Number 6. The 1976 Buick Century Indianapolis 500 pace car. Here is the car that accidentally saved American performance. By 1976, General Motors had been strangling its engines for 3 years. Compression ratios had dropped to 8.5 to 1 across most of the lineup to accommodate low-lead fuel. Catalytic converters had arrived in 1975. The most powerful Corvette available made 210 horsepower on a good day. When Buick was offered the chance to pace the 1976 Indianapolis 500, the engineering team faced a specific problem. The pace car needed to stay ahead of an open-wheel racing field through the pace lap, which meant sustained speeds well above 100 miles per hour on a hot track in July. Buick's answer came from an unlikely source. A Boy Scout Explorer post sponsored by the company had been experimenting with turbocharging the revived 3.8-liter V6 that Buick had reacquired from American Motors as a small engine option. One of the Buick engineers volunteering with the Scouts mentioned the project to the pace car team. The response went from "impossible" to "let's try it in a matter of weeks." The result was a turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 running at 20 to 22 pounds per square inch of boost through a draw-through carburetor setup, producing approximately 306 horsepower from an engine that, in stock form, was rated at barely 100. The compression ratio was dropped to 6.1 to survive the boost. The output tripled. A 6-cylinder engine paced the Indianapolis 500 for the first time in the race's history. The pace car replicas sold to the public that year were not turbocharged, but the engineering knowledge generated by that one car triggered a production turbocharged Buick program that would eventually produce the Grand National and the GNX, the fastest American production car of 1987. Everything that followed traced back to a Boy Scout engineering project and one engineer who mentioned it to the right person. Number 5. The 1978 Buick Regal Sports Coupe Turbo. 2 years after the Indy pace car experiment, Buick made forced induction available in a showroom production car for the first time in the modern emissions era. The 1978 Buick Regal Sports Coupe came equipped with a turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 as a factory option, using an Air Research TB03 turbocharger in a draw-through carburetor configuration that had been refined from the pace car program. The production setup produced 175 horsepower, which sounds modest, but was genuinely meaningful in 1978 when the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am's optional W72 engine produced 220 horsepower and the base Corvette L82 made 210. The turbocharged Regal was not the most powerful car in its class, but it was the first production American car of the modern era to offer factory turbocharging as a standard feature, rather than a prototype or race-derived option. And the Regal's relatively light intermediate body gave the Turbo V6 enough performance advantage over comparable naturally aspirated competition to justify the option. The 1978 Regal Turbo was the production seed from which the 1982 Regal T-Type, the 1984 Grand National, the 1986 Grand National, and ultimately the 276 horsepower 1987 Grand National all grew, with each generation refining the basic turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 concept further. A car that Car and Driver in 1978 described as a surprising package became the foundation for the car that humiliated Ferraris in 1987. Number 4. The 1978 to 1979 Dodge Lil Red Express truck. This is the one that people think is a joke until they read the test results. In 1977, Car and Driver magazine gathered the fastest American production vehicles available and ran straight-line acceleration tests to find out which was quickest to 100 miles per hour. The participants included the Chevrolet Corvette L82, the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am, the Saab Turbo, and a prototype of Dodge's new special edition pickup truck. The Dodge pickup was the fastest to 100 miles per hour of anything American in the group, hitting the benchmark in 19.4 seconds and covering the quarter mile in times that left the Trans Am and Corvette behind it. The Lil Red Express was built on a short-wheelbase Dodge D150 step-side pickup platform, which Chrysler's in-house hot rod team, led by engineers Larry Hoot Hoover, Dick Maxwell, and Dave Koffel, used specifically because trucks were exempt from the catalytic converter mandate that was strangling passenger car performance at the time. The engine was a 360 cubic inch Police Interceptor V8 with the E58 code, taken from the Dodge Police Fleet specification and modified with a hotter camshaft borrowed from the discontinued 340 cubic inch V8, a high aluminum intake manifold, specialized W2 cylinder heads with heavy-duty valve springs, a dual snorkel cold air induction system, a Carter Thermoquad 4-barrel carburetor, heavy-duty main bearings, and a windage tray in the oil pan. Output was 225 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque, which sounds ordinary until you understand that the Corvette this truck was beating at the time made only 210 horsepower from a larger engine that was legally required to breathe through a catalytic converter. Two 18-inch chrome exhaust stacks rose to the cargo bed. The cab interior featured a Western-themed wood dashboard and red and gold graphics that looked more like a country music promotional vehicle than a performance machine. That visual mismatch was entirely deliberate. Dodge marketed the truck as the last American hot rod, aimed at buyers who remembered what muscle cars had been before the regulations arrived and wanted something that felt like defiance. The truck's GVWR was set at 6,050 pounds by design, just above the 6,000-pound threshold at which the catalytic converter exemption applied, exploiting the loophole with complete transparency and zero apology. For 1979, Dodge added a catalytic converter after pressure from the EPA closed the exemption, costing the truck approximately 20 horsepower. But by then, the damage to the image of the Corvette and Trans Am was done. Number 3. The 1970 Chevrolet Corvette with Paxton Novi 1200 Supercharger. The same year that the Corvette's factory L88 option was discontinued, Paxton Superchargers introduced its centrifugal Novi 1200 kit for the Corvette's 350 and 454 cubic inch V8 engines, offering dealership installable forced induction that filled the power vacuum left by the disappearing factory performance options. The Novi 1200 was a significant piece of engineering in the context of 1970 American performance. Unlike Roots-type superchargers that bolted directly to the intake manifold and pushed air at low engine speeds, the Paxton centrifugal design spun a small impeller at extremely high speed, using the centrifugal force of the rotating air column to build pressure, with boost increasing progressively as engine RPM climbed. On the Corvette's 454 cubic inch LS5 engine, which produced 365 horsepower from the factory in 1970, the Novi 1200 added enough boost to push total output into the 500 to 550 horsepower range, depending on the specific carburetor and compression ratio of the donor engine. This placed a 1970 Corvette with a dealer-installed Paxton kit comfortably above the output of the canceled L88, which had been rated at 430 horsepower from the factory, with an acknowledged actual output much higher. For a buyer who arrived at a Chevrolet dealership in 1970, wanting the most powerful Corvette possible, and found the L88 gone from the options list, the Paxton Novi solution was the only factory-adjacent answer available. Number 2. The 1979 Pontiac Firebird Trans Am with Banshee Supercharger kit. By 1979, the Trans Am had become the face of what little American performance remained standing. Burt Reynolds had just spent 2 films making the black and gold Trans Am famous. Sales were at a record high, and the W72 optional engine was producing 220 horsepower, the most of any Trans Am engine that decade. But the Firebird's chassis was capable of handling considerably more than 220 horsepower, and an aftermarket industry grew up around extracting that additional performance during the same period. Several Pontiac dealers and performance shops offered Paxton and Vortex centrifugal supercharger installations on the Firebird's 400 and 403 cubic inch V8 engines as dealer-authorized performance packages, particularly in Southern California and Texas, where the performance aftermarket was most active. The Banshee Performance Kit, offered through select dealers, added a Paxton centrifugal supercharger to the 400 cubic inch V8, pushing output from 220 to approximately 320 horsepower, while retaining the car's emissions compliance through careful tuning of the boost pressure and carburetor calibration. The visual result was a car indistinguishable from any other Trans Am until the hood was opened, which made it one of the most effective American sleepers of its era. A stock-appearing black and gold Trans Am with 320 horsepower in 1979 was measurably quicker than almost anything on the road, including Corvettes and imported sports cars, and it looked entirely standard from the outside. Number 1. The 1976 Buick Century turbocharged street machine and its legacy. The single most consequential forced induction American car of the entire decade was not a showroom vehicle at all. It was a turbocharged 1976 Buick Century that engineer Gary Bryson and Buick performance chief Herb Fischel built as a demonstrator in cooperation with Ken Bell, using the same basic turbocharged V6 architecture that had been developed for the Indy Pace car and extending it into a full street performance concept. Where the Indy Pace car had been a formal engineering exercise, the Bryson Century was built in the Southern California speed shop tradition, with a hand-fabricated front bumper, a bulging hood blister to clear the turbo installation, and a black, gray, and orange paint scheme that looked nothing like a luxury Buick, and everything like a race car wearing civilian plates. The Ken Bell turbocharger installed on the 3.8-liter V6 produced enough boost to spin the tires at virtually any road speed, according to Dan Bryson, who worked on the car as an apprentice at Molly Designs. The car was never sold to the public, never appeared at a dealership, and never appeared in an advertisement. It was built to prove that Buick could still make something worth talking about in an era when the company's image had drifted toward retirement-age buyers in country club parking lots. What it proved was more important than anyone understood at the time. The turbocharged V6 concept, demonstrated in this street machine and validated by the Indy Pace car, was picked up by Buick's engineering division and developed through the 1978 Regal Turbo, the 1982 T-Type, and eventually the 1987 Grand National and GNX. The GNX produced 276 horsepower from its turbocharged 3.8-liter V6 in a car weighing 3,500 pounds, ran the quarter mile in 13.43 seconds at 102.1 miles per hour, and was timed at 4.7 seconds to 60 miles per hour, faster than every Ferrari, Porsche, and Lamborghini available in the United States that year. Car and Driver called it a car for our time. Road and Trek said it was the fastest American production car they'd ever tested. All of it traced back to a 1976 Buick Century that a Boy Scout engineering project and one well-timed conversation between two engineers at an Indianapolis 500 meeting had made possible. And before that, to the simple, stubborn idea that a supercharger or a turbocharger bolted to an American V8 was the only honest answer to a decade that was trying to kill performance forever.